This is introduction to section 1.7, part 1, where we talk about midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane. Now, here in part 1, we're going to be discussing how to find the midpoint of a segment, both on a number line and in a coordinate plane. Okay, so midpoint formulas. There's two of them here as we look, and then they're very similar. Okay, let's start with a number line. So it says here the coordinate of the midpoint is the average or mean of the coordinates of the endpoints. Again, when you're finding the midpoint of anything, it's the middle, it's the average. Okay? So when you find the average, you add the things up, divide by how many you have. Well, in this case, we only have 2 points. Okay? So you're going to add the 2 points up and divide it by 2. So, essentially that's what we're having here. It says the coordinate of the midpoint M of line AB is A plus B divided by 2. So as you look here, you take point A, add it to point B, and divide it in half, and that's going to give me my midpoint. Now, on a coordinate plane, you have 2 things you're going to have to do it to because you have an x-axis and a y-axis. So you're going to have to be able to find the midpoint of the x and the y as well. You're still doing the same thing though. You're taking the 2 points, adding them up, the 2 x values of the points, adding them up, dividing them by 2. Taking the 2 y values of the points, adding them up, and dividing them by 2. And you should have an x coordinate and a y coordinate for every answer. Okay? So you'll have an ordered pair when you're doing a coordinate plane. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples now. And what I want you to do here is I want you to hit pause and see if you can answer letter A before I even go through and do it, and see if you come up with the correct answer. Okay, now that you've hit pause and you've come up with an answer, let's go through and look at this. So it says AB has endpoints of -4 and 9. What is the coordinates of its midpoint? So as we look at this here, we've got -4 and 9. So what I'm going to do, the midpoint is going to equal the 2 endpoints added together, -4 and 9. Divided by 2. Well, this happens to be 5 divided by 2, which in this case the midpoint is going to be 2.5. So the midpoint between -4 and +9 is 2.5. Okay, so let's take a look at example B. This time it says EF has endpoints where E is the ordered pair 7, 5. And F is the ordered pair 2, -4. Fine, what are the coordinates of its midpoint? Okay, so now, I'm going to do this 2 ways. An X value and a Y value. I'm going to need to set this up this way. So, in this case, I know that the midpoint is equal to, I'm going to take the X values, 7 and 2, add them together, divided by 2. Well, when I do this, I get 9 divided by 2, and 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. Okay, the midpoint of the y values. Again, I'm going to take the y values, add them together, and divide it by 2. In this case, 5 minus 4 is 1, divided by 2 is 0.5. So, the midpoint is at the ordered pair 4.5 and 0.5. So in other words, I'm going right 4.5. Okay? So I'm going right 4.5 right there. And then I'm going up a half, and my midpoint is right there on that line, right there. That's the midpoint of our line. Okay? The one thing you want to do when you're given a pair of ordered pairs like this to find the midpoint with is check it out. Put it in and see if it comes out to be on your line in the correct spot. If it doesn't, then somewhere along the lines you made a mistake. Okay. The last 2 here are a little bit different. Because now they're giving you the midpoint and one endpoint, and they want you to find the other endpoint. Okay, so it says here in this one, it says the midpoint of CD is -2, 1. One endpoint is -5, 7. What are the coordinates of the other endpoint? Okay, again, as I look at my formula, we know the midpoint is equal to x plus x1 over 2. and y plus y1 over 2. That's what the midpoint equals. So now, in my equation, instead of just plugging it in and dividing, we're going to end up having to solve some equations. So I know, as I look, again, I'm going to split this up into x and y columns. So for my x values, the midpoint x value is -2 equals, I don't know the one endpoint, and I'm going to add that to the other endpoint and divide it by 2. So now you have a variable in your equation. We're going to go ahead and multiply by 2 on each side to get rid of the 2 on the bottom. And so now -4 equals x minus 5, because plus negative is minus. And to solve that, we get x is going to equal, if I add 5, I get x to equal 1. That's the first coordinate of our endpoint. The y value. The y value of the endpoint is 1 equals y, and the y value of the y value of the endpoint is 7 divided by 2. Okay, so again, I'm going to multiply by 2. 2 is going to equal y plus 7, and then subtract 7, and y is going to equal -5. So the ordered pair of the endpoint is at 1, -5. And if I start at 0, 0, and I go to that point, I go right 1, and I go down 5, and look at where we end up, right there on the bottom of the line. Okay? So again, if you're given a graph, you can always check that number. All right, again, another example. It says the midpoint of AB is 4, -9. So now they're giving you the midpoint again. Endpoint A has coordinates -3, -5. What are the coordinates of B? Again, I'm going to set this up to where I'm going to go x and y here. The x coordinate of the midpoint is 4. I don't know the one endpoint, and we've got -3 divided by 2. Again, it would be plus -3 if you put the plus sign in there. Multiply by 2 on each side, and you get 8 equals x minus 3. If you add 3, x is going to equal 11. Okay. Now I take the y coordinate of the midpoint, which is -9. Set that equal to y, and then -5 divided by 2. Multiply by 2 on each side, and I get -18 equals y minus 5. If I add 5, y is going to equal -13. So, the ordered pair of the endpoint is 11 and -13. All right, so in this section, part 1, we talked about midpoints and being able to find midpoints, or given the midpoint, find the end point. Okay, this concludes section 1.7, part 1. Don't forget to complete your WSQ.